Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this second class on using TinkerCAD. This month we're going to be learning how to make trinkets, essentially things that can be 3D printed and used in your everyday life. So for the first lesson, we're going to go over how to make a customizable name tag that you could use, clip onto a set of keys or on your backpack, something like that. And then for the second lesson, we're going to learn how to basically make a phone stand that you can use to prop up your phone if you want to use it to watch videos like this on YouTube, or to read ebooks, or to even do your homework. And you can also use that as a tablet stand holder too. So hopefully you enjoy this, and thank you for tuning in. Now, one other thing before we get started today, I just wanted to mention that if you don't have any experience with TinkerCAD, it would be good to go over our first video that we created. It was last month in December on ornaments, how to create ornaments in TinkerCAD. The first 44 minutes of that video goes over all of the tools that you're going to use to create models in TinkerCAD. So it would be good to watch that and review it if you don't have any experience with TinkerCAD. And we'll put a link to that below this video. So just wanted to make a note for that. And anyways, I'll see you in the next part of the video. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so for those of you that have never signed up for a TinkerCAD account, the first thing you're going to want to do is sign up for one. You go to this website, tinkercad.com, and you want to click on Join Now. I'm using Google Chrome as the browser, but you can use Firefox. I'm sure you can use some other browsers, but I think they're kind of optimized for Google Chrome and Firefox, so I'd go with those browsers if you can. You'll want to click on Join Now. And what you want to do is click on create a personal account. And what I would recommend first is having one of your parents walk you through creating this account and setting it up under their own name. Generally, if you're under, from what I understand, under the age of 13, there's a verification process that you have to go through if you're just signing up by yourself. But if you do it with your parent, you should be able to not have to do the verification process and kind of jump into modeling. So I would click on this and have your parent walk you through that. And then we'll move on to the next part of the video. Thanks. All right, now that you're all signed up, you're going to come to this sign in page. I've got my username, and I'll click on next. My password, I'll click on sign in. And you'll come to this my recent designs area. What you're going to do is click on create new design. But this area itself, this is where all of the designs that you create in TinkerCAD are saved. They're all saved under your Internet Cloud account that you create when you sign up to use TinkerCAD. So everything will be saved under this account, which is super handy for future editing. I'm going to go up to create new design. And I'm going to come to the work plane area. So if you're not totally familiar with this, like I said, I recommend watching that first video we made on creating ornaments. But if you are, just as a refresher, so the work plane area, this is actually where you're going to take your existing basic shapes and all these other kinds of shapes that you can use, including it's called the shape generators, and text and numbers, stuff like that. This is where you take your shape like that from here and you just drag it over to the work plane. And once you have it on the work plane, you can manipulate the size of it and different parameters like that. So you can actually bring it out like that. You can increase the size going up in the Z height direction like that. And grab it like this to take it up in the work plane area and so forth. Then if you want to get rid of that, you just make sure that object is highlighted and click delete on your keyboard. Some of the other tools over here, there's a home button. So if you're, let's say you've got the sphere and you're zoomed in really closely to the sphere, you can click on the home button to actually zoom out to a home view. That's going to basically just kind of recenter everything for you. You also have this view cube that you can click to change your viewpoints all around. There's a zoom function right here. But what you can also do with your mouse, which you will definitely want to use a mouse here in TinkerCAD to create your models. It'll definitely be frustrating if you try to use the little touchpad on your, if you've got a laptop. It's definitely going to be a lot harder to make a model using that. So I'd recommend having a mouse. But anyway, to zoom in and out, you want to use that middle scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in, pushing it forward, and then pushing it backward to zoom out. Then the rightmost button on your mouse is basically like a panning tool, so you can pan around your model itself. If you click that middle scroll wheel, you can actually click on the work plane area. You kind of get like a panning from left to right sort of tool option right there. The leftmost button on your mouse is actually going to be what you're going to use to highlight items to group them together. So I will use this right now, show you. I'm going to use my left mouse button and use that right there, and that's highlighted. So I'll show you in the later part of the video how that all these tools are used. But like I said, this is just kind of a refresher if you haven't used TinkerCAD in a while. And there's other tools that I'm going to use in the video that I'll sort of slightly explain as I go through the modeling, but I'm not going to spend too much time on going over the interface. I would recommend, like I had said before, checking out that first video we made in December, just to kind of get a good overview of all the tools, since there's definitely a lot of them at your disposal. All right, so the first thing that we're going to create is we're going to 3D model a customizable name tag that can be 3D printed out. So this will be super fun, and you can get really creative with it. And I'm going to show you another option in the later part of this first tutorial using what's called the shape generators, which is over here. You've got your basic shapes. It's under shape generators, and it is the US states tool. And I'll show you how to make a customizable keychain with the state of Montana as the basic base for your keychain. All right, so before getting into the box modeling, I do want to go over one thing that if you haven't modeled in TinkerCAD previously before, or if it's been a while, just that you want to use millimeters or the metric system when modeling. And actually, TinkerCAD defaults to that. So what we'll do is we're going to grab a box, bring it over to the work plane, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So this box is in millimeters, so it's 20 millimeters going this way, 20 millimeters going that way, and 20 millimeters in height going like this. You can change this to inches if you want by clicking the Edit Grid tool down here, and then you can change your default units from millimeters to inches. I would definitely recommend, if you're going to be doing this exercise to 3D print what you're making, to keep your units in millimeters. Basically, essentially, because most 3D printers that I've worked with and that we've bought and that are basically on the market today that people use, they use the metric system for their build plate area. So it's just a lot easier to do modeling in metric for 3D printing, and it's kind of just the standard for a lot of the machines that have come out of Europe and stuff. So I would recommend staying in the metric system through this modeling exercise and kind of anything you do in TinkerCAD. It'll just be a lot easier in terms of trying to 3D print it with the right dimensions in the future. All right, so now on to the modeling exercise itself. I'm going to zoom in, and like we had done before, I had grabbed the box tool, moved it over to the work plane. I'm going to click on this, and I actually want to change the size of the box itself to basically mirror what a keychain would look like that you would find at any store. So what I'm going to do is change the sizing to, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to change the sizing going this way to 70 millimeters. So all you got to do is click on this box and type in 70, hit enter. I'm going to move this over a little bit using my left mouse button. You can move your object around the plane like that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the size of this model going this way to, looks like 30 millimeters. I'm just going to type in 30, hit enter. And now I want to change the height of the model itself. Right now it's at 20 millimeters. If you click on that, that gives you that value right there. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to change that to 10 millimeters. Hit enter. All right. So now I actually want to make a copy of this box and take the copy and turn it into a whole. I'll show you how to do that. We're going to zoom out. Make sure this is highlighted, and it is, with my left mouse button. Clicked on it. And we're going to use the tool. It's called Duplicate and Repeat. So you can click that tool to duplicate and repeat this model. What you can also do is use the keyboard shortcut Control D, which I'm going to do. I'm going to rechange my view right now. I'm going to use my right mouse button and kind of move this up like that. And I'm going to do Control D on my keyboard, Control D. And so a copy has been created, and I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move this copy just slightly out of the way. I'm going to use the rightmost arrow key, move it out like that. Now what I want to do is turn this into a hole. So I just need to click on hole. Okay, so now we're going to move this box that we turned into a hole just over to the side like that. Now we want to change the proportions of this and actually like round off the edges. What we're going to do is use these tools up here to do that. So what I'm going to do is to kind of round out the edges of the box. I'm going to change this radius up here from 0. I'm going to change it to 5. I just click on that. I'm going to type in 5 like that. And now you can see it's kind of more of a rounded out shape like that, more like a keychain that you would find for sale, any grocery store like that. Right, so now what I want to do is actually take this box that's a hole, and I'm going to change the size as well as the radius. I'm going to change the radius from 0 to 3, and I want to change the size just kind of ever so slightly. I'm going to change it down from 70 to, we'll change it to 60. I'm going to change this length to 20 millimeters, hit enter. And then what I'm going to do is I want to align these two together. So I can basically line this up into that and have this cut into this. So I'm going to highlight both of these. I'm going to use my align tool up here to align the shapes. I'll click that. And I want them aligned by clicking right there, like that. And then I want them aligned going this way, clicking right there on that model. And then if I click right there, right, that spot right there, that little align part tool, that will align this to the middle of this. So click that. So now that's aligned, and it looks like we will actually want to change the size of this. I'm going to click out of here to get out on this side to get out of the align tool. And what I'm going to do is click on the hole box right there. I'm just going to change this size a little bit. I'm going to change it to 60, let's see, 65. Tab over, you can click the tab key on your keyboard and then change this size right here to, let's see, I'll do 25. Let's see if that works. I'm going to realign these as well. Let's see if this will fit. So I'm going to highlight both of these, click the align tool, I'm going to align them, clicking right there, and then clicking, let's see, clicking the middle button right there. So this hole should be aligned to the middle of this. So now what I want to do is you can kind of see what's going to happen is that this hole is going to cut through this outer shape that we made. It's going to actually cut through the bottom, as you can see. If you scroll down this way, below the work plane area, you can see that. What we want to do is just actually slightly move this whole object up a little bit in space so it doesn't cut all the way through the bottom of this object. I'm going to zoom out just slightly. I'm going to grab this triangle tool thing right there and just move it up ever so slightly, a couple millimeters. Let's go to 3 millimeters. Now what I want to do is I want to check the bottom of this and see if it's going to cut through. I don't think it's going to cut through. It looks like it might. We'll try it out and see how it works. So now what we want to do is we want to group these and see if this whole shape right there is cutting through the bottom of this. So I'm going to highlight them both, click on group, and as you can see, it actually did not cut through the bottom of that. So that's actually pretty good, but it's kind of leaving a little bit more of a hole in there than I want. So what I'm going to do is go to click on undo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and move this up just a little bit more. So it's going above this object. Now what I think I'm going to do, I just kind of want it to cut into this object or merge into it just by a few millimeters. So I'm just going to take this, move it down ever so slightly, going a few increments of -1 millimeter each. And I think this should actually work going to -3. We look at that. The height of this is 10 millimeters. So it's just going to be cutting into this by 3. So that should actually probably work for our purposes. So now I'm going to highlight this again. I'm going to group them. So they're highlighted, click on group. Now as you can see, the hole into this is not as deep as it was previously. So that should really work well for a name tag. Now what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to change the color of this to see a little bit more of the contrast inside there. So from red to, I'm going to change it like, we'll try this purple right there. I guess it didn't really change it too much, but you can kind of get the idea of the hole that we made of that box cut into this. So now we actually want to customize this by adding text to this area in here. And so we can do that with a tool called the text tool, which is over here under basic shapes. It's this tool right here. There's also a couple other text tools you can use. If you click on this right here, this drop-down menu, go down to the shape generators and click on all. On page number 2, you have a couple other text tools, custom font text, a script text, and a text ring that basically creates text in a ring around a model. So that's another option for using text in TinkerCAD. I'm just going to click back up and go back up to basic shapes. I'm going to use the text tool in this area. I'm just going to grab this, move it over here. So as you can see, it actually, when it gets brought over to the work plane, it's actually pretty big, so we're going to have to resize it. First, what I'll do is I'm going to change the text itself. I'm going to change it to my name for today's purpose. So my first name is Ira. I'm going to do IRA, like that. Right here you can see you can change the font. So right now it's under what's called multi-language. You can see what all of these look like just simply by clicking down here and seeing how it changes the font. And yeah, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to go with the serif. I kind of like that. It's like an old school looking font that works well for this. So now what I want to do is I want to align this text to that, and I'm going to have to resize it as well. We'll first align it. So I'm going to just move this up like this using my left mouse button, and then I'll just actually move it over to this area where this model's at. And then I'm going to use the align tool from there. So I'm going to highlight these both. To resize my view, I'm going to click over here on the top view. One thing that I found too is that you can switch your perspective views to, I'll switch it to a flat view called orthographic. That's really good for lining up different elements that you're combining together. And you can actually see what it looks like. It's kind of weird looking initially, like I wouldn't probably generally model in this view type just because it's a little bit, it's less, I guess, normal or intuitive to me, but it's really good for lining up things like text or different objects together. We can get out of that view by clicking over here to perspective view. Click that, and that just gets you back to the basic like 3D modeling perspective view. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this top view cube button right there. I'm going to click into the flat view. And now what I want to do is highlight these both, go up to the align tool, and just make sure this text is like nicely aligned to this larger model. So I'm going to click over here to align it this way, and then I'm going to click it right there to align it to the middle of this going that way. So that looks good right now. So basically what we can do is I can merge this text into this model, or I can actually have it cut it out. First, what I want to do though is I'm actually going to change the color of both of these just to give a better visual contrast. I'm going to click on solid right there. I'm going to change these to like a lighter blue. And now what I can do is we'll zoom in like this, and you can actually see that this model is just slightly merging with this, but I think it's actually cutting through down the bottom here. I'm actually going to change my view back to perspective, and I'm going to pan over like this. And actually, I think what I'm going to do to give it both of these a different contrast, I'm going to change the color of the text. So I'm going to click on the text, change it to, I'll just do like black. And now we can see, I'll click on this, you can see by using this tool right there, that triangle tool, you can merge the text into the model like that. And you can actually have it basically cut through the bottom if you'd like. What I'm going to do is resize this text by moving it up like this, clicking this, and I'm just going to make it, let's say 5 millimeters in size. You can even do, let's do 3. Hit enter. And now I'm just going to slightly move it down until it basically starts merging with this part of the model. You can zoom in to get a even closer perspective on it. And we'll see, it's still on the top of the model, hasn't merged yet like that. But if I just push this down one more, so now it's merged with this model. We can zoom out, pan over like this, zoom back out again, and let's combine these two. So I will highlight these both. I'm going to combine them by grouping them. So I'm going to click on group. And now they're grouped as one shape. So when this is 3D printed, it's all going to be printed as one shape. Now I'm actually going to show you how you can create the text as a whole, or turn the text into a whole, so it actually gives you kind of like a imprinted look into this model. So to do that, I'm just going to click on the undo tool. So now they're two separate objects. They're not merged. They're not grouped. I'm going to click on that text. I'm going to click and make it a whole. So now what this is going to do, once I group these, it's actually going to show that this text is cutting into this model. And I'll show you what it looks like. It's actually really cool looking. So we'll now highlight these both and we'll click on group. As you can see, the effect of that is it's just cutting into that model itself, and it will 3D print like that, and it should look pretty good. It's kind of a cool visual effect. So that's another option for merging text into your models. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to undo this, and I'm just actually going to have the text move up in space from this model, as it's like giving you the visual the visual effect that it's actually popping up from this model. So I just did the undo button. I'm going to click undo again, and then I'm going to click undo one more time. So now we're back to the same model we had before, where this is basically, this text is just merged in with this model. And so it looks like it's popping up from this model. So what we're going to do is highlight these both and group them again. You can see right now they're made up of two shapes up there, so we'll group them. Now they're merged as one. So for the final step, we actually want to create a little like circular hole in order to use this name tag to hang up on things, or to add to a keychain, or any sort of thing that you want to personalize and hook this name tag onto. So what we're going to do, we'll click off of the model like that on the work plane. We're going to move over here to the basic shapes that we've been in, and we're going to look for, looks like it's going to be the torus tool. You can also use the tube tool for this, but I'm going to use the torus tool. I'm going to move this over like this, like that. I'm going to change my perspective with the view cube to top. I'm actually going to change my perspective to the flat or orthographic view. Click on that and click on the outside like that. And I basically want to align this to that, so it lines up perfectly. So I'm going to highlight these both, click on the align tool up here. I just want it to basically align along that part of the plane. So I'll click on that, and it's aligned right there. What actually now we'll do is I'm going to click on this. I'm just going to change the color of it just to make it easier for me to see as I'm merging the models. I'm going to change it to, I guess I'll do brown. And I'm going to zoom in, use my middle mouse button to kind of pan over slightly. And I'm going to use my right arrow key on my keyboard to push this in like this, just so it's slightly merging like that. And now I'm going to use my right mouse button to move over like this, to pan over like that. And I basically just want to use my upper mouse key, or the upwards key on my keyboard, to push this model in ever so slightly, just more into this model. So just like that. So you basically just want it to be able to merge these two, to merge together, so when they're grouped, and then when they're exported out to get 3D printed, they will actually print as one object, and so this won't be a separate thing that's printed off from this. If that happened, you'd just have a failed print. So that looks good. That looks like it's pretty well merged into this. What I can do, if I want to move this in even more, but not quite such a, it's right now it's going in increments of 1 millimeter inwards. I can change the snap grid tool right here to 0.1 millimeter, and it actually gives me a little bit more finite control of my movements. So if I do my upward key on my keyboard, you can kind of just see that it's just slightly going into that model more. So now I'm going to change my view up again, zoom out. I'm going to change my view to the perspective view. Use my middle scroller mouse button, click down on it, and move this over to slightly pan. And then I'm going to highlight these both. I'm going to click on the group tool. And now both of these are grouped. And what you have now is actually, this can be exported out as a STL file, which is what our 3D printers like to take as the file type. And this should print out very well on our 3D printers. And you can, as you can see, you can customize your name tags with all sorts of text to make it customizable for yourself or your friends. And then this little Porous tool that we used right there, that we merged with this model, you can use that to actually clip onto a keychain or hook onto whatever else that you'd like. And one thing to note too, when you're grouping objects together and they're different colors, if you haven't watched that previous TinkerCAD video, I'll just mention it now, is that any color that you choose to make your shapes, your solid shapes in TinkerCAD, that's not going to affect the color that it's 3D printed in. When you export these files to get 3D printed, all it's taking is basically the information about the shape and like text and stuff as part of the model. It's not taking into account the color of the model itself that you made into TinkerCAD. It actually can't handle that type of information, unfortunately. So our 3D printers would not be able to understand that you exported this out as a blue color. You would actually just have to let me know that when you send me the file through email to let me to have me print it for you. And so when you're happy with your model, which I am with this, it's super simple, but it should print really well. What I can do now, I'm just going to highlight this, click on it, my left mouse button. I'm going to click on the export tool, export, and then basically I want to choose the selected shape that's selected, and I want to choose the STL file format. That's really kind of like the most popular file format that our 3D printers can take to print out. So I would click on STL file, save it, and import it into the 3D model, or the 3D, it's called the 3D slicing program, which is the program that we use to load in files and set them up for 3D printing. Before we move on to the next portion of this tutorial, I also want to note that up here, if you haven't played around in TinkerCAD before, this is where you can rename your models. Anytime you create a new model in TinkerCAD, it's going to give you its own made-up name. So you can click up here and change that to whatever you'd like. I'm going to call mine Ira Nametag. And then once you click export and then export it as an STL file type, it's actually going to save as the name of the model that you called it. So it's super helpful, especially if you're working on tons of different models and want to kind of keep track of all of the things you're creating. All right, so for the next name tag model that we're going to make, or like keychain name tag, we're actually going to get out of the basic shapes and we're going to go to a special area called shape generators, which are made by users of TinkerCAD and the company that has created TinkerCAD. And they've got a really cool set of shapes of US states. So if I grab that shape right there, you'll see it's the shape of New York State. Click this and I'm going to go down to Montana right there. As you can see, that is the state of Montana where we live. I'm going to choose the top view up here. And what I want to do is I'm going to use this rotate tool to rotate it around, but I'm not going to use the rotate tool inside where I've got my mouse pointer, because it's a fixed grid of 22.5 degree angles that it moves at. What I can do is I can click this and move outside of that area right here and actually move this at free-handed angles. So I'm just going to change this so it's kind of more left to right, straight on. So, and then I'm going to change my view from the regular perspective view to orthographic. And what I'm going to do is I want to make this bigger, but I actually want to keep the proportions of this model. So I'm going to click first Shift on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click down here on that box, and I'm going to move this model out like that. And I don't have a particular size in mind. I'm just going to go to kind of where I like it. So I like this size for this model. That looks pretty cool. So now I'm going to move back to the perspective view, and I'm going to go up like this using my right mouse button, and I'm going to zoom back out. And I want to kind of figure out either if I want to use text or numbers on this. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the number 406 on top of the state of Montana. That's our area code. If you use a phone, that is our area code. If you've got family from out of the state and they want to call us, they got to use the area code 406, which is our phone number area code. So I'm going to put that on top of this. And then after that, I'm going to put a little like circular thing up there so it can actually be hung, either as a keychain or maybe you can have it as an ornament or something like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get out of the shape generators area. I'm going to go back up to around near basic shapes and go to text and numbers. And I'm going to use this text tool. Right here you can do individual letters and numbers, but I found that using the text tool itself actually is a bit quicker. So I'm going to grab this, the text tool, move it over right there, put it on top of the state of Montana. And I'm going to change the color just so I can see a better contrast between the two models. Change it let's do, I'll do a light blue. So now what I want to do is change the text from saying text to 406 for the state. And I like how that's looking. I'm going to change the size of it by clicking right there, and I'm going to make it 5 millimeters just by typing in 5, hitting enter on that. And what I want to do actually is I want to try to center this onto this model. It looks pretty centered, but it might need a little bit more work. So I'm going to highlight these both, go up to the align tool, and click this to align it, and then click this to align it. And so that is relatively aligned to the middle, even though maybe it doesn't look like it, but that looks good to me. So the next step I'll take is what I actually want to do is I want this to cut into this model. So I'm going to click on the 406. Instead of having it be a solid, I'm going to click on hole. And then I want to look at this, and I want to use that tool right there, that little cone kind of shape, and move it up in space like that. And as you can see, it's above the model now. What I want to do is I'm going to grab this and just slowly move this into the model, and I want to make it so it goes into this and merges with this model, but it doesn't cut through the bottom. And it looks like it's not doing that, so I think we're kind of perfect in terms of like how it is merged with this main model of the state of Montana. So now what I want to do is use my left mouse button and highlight these both. I'm going to click on group. And I like that. That should look pretty cool when it's 3D printed. That's a really cool effect. So now to finalize this, I want to go up here, and instead of being in text and numbers, I want to go to basic shapes. And I'm going to switch it up this time, and I'm going to use the tube tool instead of the torus tool. So I'm going to move this over to here and zoom in, and I want to just double check the height of this model. I can click right there. So it looks like this is 3.38 millimeters. I'm actually going to up that to 5. So I'm going to click that and type in the number 5. Now what I want to do is I want to make the height of that little tube shape the same as this. So I'm going to change it to 5 millimeters just by typing it in like that. And then that tube size is it's a little too big for my liking. So I'm going to click on the shift tool on my keyboard, and I'm going to click right there, that box, and just resize it a little bit. And it's going to keep the proportions of this so it looks nice and not wonky. So that's a good size right there, I think. 7 millimeters for this way and this way. Now what I want to do is I want to grab this model, move it down like this, and then I'm going to switch my view. I'm going to pan around using my right mouse button like that. And I want to merge this with that. So what I can do is click on that right there. I'm going to change my snap grid right now to 0.1 millimeter. I'm going to change my view, pan up a little bit. I'm going to click this model again, and then I'm going to use the up arrow on my keyboard to just kind of slowly merge it with the model like that. I'm going to zoom in to get a better look at it, and that looks pretty good. I might move it out just a little bit. So that should actually work being 3D printed. What I might want to do though, just to make sure this has enough strength, I'm going to increase the size of this from being 7 millimeters to maybe like 8 or 10 or something. So I'm going to click on Shift. I'm going to move this out like that. You can see it's moving in small increments. I'm going to change it to 10 millimeters just to be safe. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my up arrow on my keyboard and just slowly kind of merge this into that to where it basically, like, once it kind of reaches this point just before this shape and that part of the shape meets. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to change my view. I'm going to go to the home view, click that. And now what I want to do is I want to group that with that. So I'm going to highlight them both using my left mouse button. Click up on group. And now they're all grouped as one shape. And they should 3D print really well. And it's a super flat surface, so it should print really well on the 3D printer cold plate. So that is how to do a second model name tag or keychain holder, whatever you'd want to call it, for practical 3D printing purposes. And as you can see, you can use a lot of different shapes as the base for your name tag or keychain model. You can use the state of the US, state of Montana. Go into the shape generators. You can click around. You can use different countries. Yeah, there's lots of options. You can add different kinds of text to it as well. You You could do a flower. This flower shape is your base. So you're really just limited by your creativity and sort of what you'd like your name tag or keychain to look like. So thanks for tuning in, and now we'll move on to the next model. Okay, so the last thing we're going to make today as part of this tutorial series is a phone stand holder. It's going to look something like this. We'll scroll to the side like this. So as you can see, it's something where you can actually set your phone up um, going upwards this way or on the side going this way to watch, educational YouTube videos like this, or if you like to read ebooks, or if you need to use your phone to do homework. This also might fit a smaller tablet. I haven't printed it out and tested it yet, but that's something to explore too. But for this last lesson, we're going to make something similar to this. So you can 3D print it out and actually use it to hold your phone and perhaps a tablet as well. So stay tuned. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to create a model of your phone to make sure that it works. So I have a Motorola Android phone, and I figured out my dimensions by taking a tape measure and then just using the bottom part of the tape measure to figure out the measurements, which on the bottom part of tape measures, they are set up, the numbers are in metric, so in millimeters. So if you've got a tape measure at home and you're not totally sure how to use it, one of your parents can actually kind of show you what I'm talking about. But it's just below, like at the top of the tape measure, you can see it's all set up in inches. At the bottom of the tape measure slide piece, you should see that it's actually all the measurements turn into metric. So we'll want to measure our phone in the metric system because for 3D printing, that's kind of the easiest way for 3D modeling software and 3D printers to understand the models that you create. So I took measurements of my Android phone, and what I'm going to do is make just a simple model of it to use to help us make this phone stand. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab a box, move it out to here, and I'm going to change the sizing of it. I'm going to go right there, and for the sort of length going this way, it is 165 millimeters. So I'm just going to click that and type 165, hit enter, and then I'm going to move this up like that. And then I'm going to change the size of it going this way. And that size is 83 millimeters and hit enter. And so now what I want to do is change it to the thickness of the phone itself with the little case I have on it. So that is, for my purposes, it's 14 millimeters, but I'm just going to add 1 more millimeter to it for some extra wiggle room. So I'm going to type 15 right there. So that's kind of your basic model shape of my phone size. I'm actually going to go up to the radius and change this just ever so slightly to give some rounded edges to this model to basically mimic what a phone looks like. So now what I want to do, I'm just going to move this over to the side. We're not going to use it quite yet. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to take the cylinder object, grab it, and plop it down on the work plane. And then what you want to do, we're going to rotate it. Whoops, using that fixed rotation tool. I want to move it down to 90 degrees so it's sitting nice and flat on the plane like that. Now I'm going to increase the size of this going this way. I'm going to elongate it by 95 millimeters. So I'm going to just click on this and type in 95 and hit enter. Now what I want to do is I actually want to take another box object and move it over here to the work plane. I'm going to change the color of it just to give it some contrast to this green. Now what I want to do is I want to make this object, let's see, so 95 millimeters this way, and then I'm going to make it going upwards. I'm going to make this 120 millimeters, hit enter like that. I'm going to zoom out. Now I'm going to use this radius tool again just to soften those sharp edges on this. So I'm going to use this and just slightly move it down like that, just so it's not, when it prints out, it's not like a sharp corner. In terms of the thickness of it, going from here to there, 20 millimeters should work. That should be enough. So now what I want to do is I actually want to rotate this box. I'm going to move this and click on this right view cube right there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I want to use this rotation tool again, and I want to use the fixed rotation of this. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to move it down. Whoops. Zoom up, get a little bit closer to it. Click that and move down like that. I'm going to have it go in the fixed rotation of 22.5 degrees. I'm going to move it down to -45 like that. So now what I want to do is try to align these two together to get it more centered. So I'm going to highlight those, click the align tool. I'm going to align them this way like that. That looks pretty good. Click out of the align tool. And now what I want to do is just move this guy, whoops, downwards a little bit in order to just basically touch this. So I'm going to use that this tool, this cone tool right there, and just bring it down just like so. I'm going to click on this object too and press the letter D, just so it's that will make this object there sit nice and flat. This part right there onto the work plane. All right, so now what we want to do is actually create the base. That's going to be sort of the thing that really holds all these objects together. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the round roof object, grab it, bring it over here, just like that. I'm going to move in, change my view. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit. Now what I want to do is I want to rotate this around. So I'm going to click on this, and I want to rotate it basically 90 degrees. So it's kind of nice and going this way, much like these. And now what I want to do is I want to increase the width of these to basically match these. So I'm going to make it 95 degrees, or 95 millimeters. First, what I want to do is I want to try to align this to these. So I'm going to highlight these. Whoops. And when I grab this, I want to highlight these and make sure that's not highlighted. So now I'm going to click on Align. I'm going to just basically align this, clicking like that, so it's in the middle right there, and then that should be good, actually. Actually, if I click this, let's try that. Oh, no, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click on Undo for that. So we're going to just leave this right there for now. Now what I want to do is I want to increase the size of this going, whoops, this way, left to right, to 95 millimeters. Hit Enter. And then I want to basically move this over and then realign it again. So I'm going to highlight these both, click the Align tool, and then align it, clicking this middle button right there. All right. And then if I click this object as well, click right there, and then if I click right there, it should align this with this area right there. All right. That's actually not what we wanted either, so I'm going to do Undo. That didn't quite work. So I'm going to click out of this, and I'm basically just going to eyeball moving this into this. So I've changed my view to the right view right here. I'm going to use my left arrow mouse button on my keyboard to move this in just like this. I'm going to move it in so it's basically it meets these objects right here. Now what I want to do is actually increase the size of this going from left to right looking this way. So increasing the size of the base going this way. So I'm going to increase it to 85 millimeters. I'll type in 85 and click Enter. So it's 85 this way. And then I'm actually going to increase the size of this object going upwards. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to change that size. I'm going to change it to 35 millimeters. Type in 35, hit Enter. Oh, and that actually kind of messed it up. But if I click on this object and press the letter D on my keyboard, it'll move it up on the plane like that. So this is exactly what we want. We've basically got this base object connecting this object as well as that object. So we are almost finished. The next step is to group all three of these models into one object. I'm going to highlight these and just make sure everything is nicely well aligned. Go up to the Align tool, and it looks like it's nicely aligned there, so we should be fine. So now I'm going to group these, so I'm going to highlight these using my left mouse button and highlighting all these, and then going up to this group tool and clicking that. And now these are all one piece grouped together. And I'm actually going to change the color of it as well. Click on that. I'm going to change it to, I'll do like a, let's see, maybe a light blue for the whole thing. That looks pretty good. So now we actually want to use this phone model to create basically a little ridge down here for it to sit. What I do is first turn this from a solid into a hole. I click like that. And then I want to actually rotate this to meet that angle of this. I'm going to move this over like that to the work plane area. Move it in like that, like it's going to cut through it, basically. But now what I want to do is change my view like that. I want to click on that tool and then click on this rotation tool right there. I want to change that to from negative to negative 22.5 to actually 45 degrees like that. And now I'm going to use this cone tool like that to move it up in space like that. And I'm going to align it. So I'm going to highlight these both, click the align tool, and highlight it, or I mean align it going this way so it meets this like that. So we're good with aligning it to the middle of that. I'm going to click out here. I'm going to click this. I'm just going to move it slightly in using my up arrow key. Take a look like this. I'm actually going to I'm going to use this cone tool and move it downwards, just ever so slightly like that, into the model. So then there's like basically like a lip created. Now I realize too that if I cut into this, I'm going to want to cut away this stuff up here too. So I think instead of trying to resize the thing, I'm going to use the duplicate and repeat tool to try to make a copy of this and just move that copy up here to cut away this part. So I'm going to do Control D, or up here you can click duplicate and repeat, do Control D, and then we'll see where that copy ended up. Let's see. Up like that. Oh, okay. So there's the copy right there. So I'm going to do undo real quick, bring it back down like that. I'm going to move that copy. I'm going to use my right arrow button, move it in like this, over like that. And then what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use this cone tool right there to move it up, just like that. So it's basically they're like going to be meeting each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of eyeball where this is going to get cut. And they look pretty close. So I'm going to take my snap grid off, click that off. Zoom in. It looks like they're just about meeting. This is just cutting it a little bit more. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Move my tool up like that. Looks like, yeah, right there. That's kind of where they're meeting. So now I'm going to group this and see how this looks. I'll highlight these both, click on group. Awesome. So yeah, that's perfect. That should work out really well. I can kind of see there's a little bit of a slight edge like that, but that's not a big deal. So now as you can see, you should actually be able to use this to set your phone going left to right this way, to watch movies or do homework or whatever, or set your phone up going up like this. And this should be totally fully printable, 3D printable, and it might take a little bit of time to print, but what we can do is increase what's called the layer height of the print, which makes it print faster. It just means that you'll see the lines of the 3D print will be more prominent on the print itself. But so another way to accomplish cutting this up like this would be to, if we went back in time, so clicked undo, undo again, undo again, undo again, undo again. We'll do undo as well. Going back in time, clicking on undo, and then basically just increasing the size of this model going this way. So I'd increase it to like, let's say 100, let's do 125 just to be safe. Hit on enter, right, like that with the value you put in, and click enter. And now I'm going to use this rotation tool again to rotate it 45 degrees going that way. Now I'm going to use this cone tool again to move it up in space, just like that. And so this works as well. But first what I want to do is align these two. Highlight that, align it, clicking that middle circle there. So align it to the middle like that. And this should totally work. So like, let's see what we'll do. We'll highlight these both and click on group. And yeah, that totally works as well. So there's definitely that's two options right there. If you need to increase the size of your model itself to cut out more parts of this. And this should be fully 3D printable. And I'm going to show an example of a print we did of this at the end of this video, just so you can see what it looks like after it's been printed. So at this point, what you can do is actually customize this holder as well. So like we've done in the previous videos, what you could do is, the easiest could be text, but you could also grab potentially some of these other things, such as the characters, and fit something like the spectacles. You could try to fit into the model like this if you wanted, or the peace hand like that. You could have it, grab that and have it sit off to the side like that, like it's doing the peace hand, but it's coming out from the back of the base. So you got a lot of different options that you can play around with. You can also add, say, flippers if you want to the model, like it's got feet, like that. And then you would align these and just combine them to this model. What I'm going to do to keep it simple, though, is just to add some text. So I'm going to go up to up here, go to the basic shapes, and I'm going to grab the text tool. First, I want to change my work plane. Click on the work plane tool right there, and then I'm going to change the work plane to be this right there. Zoom in, and change it to be that angle, that plane right there. Click on that. I'm going to grab my text. All right, now I want to change it to, let's see, let's try out, you know what? Let's try some different text out. Delete that. I'm going to go down to the all shape generators. I choose those text tools. So I might try, I'm going to use the script text because it looks pretty cool. Move this over like this. I'm going to change it from font being script to, we can see what major snafu. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Techniku, let's see what that looks like. Oh, that's pretty weird. Verdana, do stencil. Maybe I'll try stencil, see how that works. I'm going to change this now, the color, to, I'm going to do a red, just to help me with the contrast of this. I'm going to change the text to say Ira, my name, which is IRA. And now what I want to do is I actually want to change the size of this. So I want to change it. Let's see, we'll do going this way. We'll change it to 15. And then we'll change it going this way. Whoops, zoom out. We'll just change that to 40. Hit enter. Now, yeah, so that looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is actually get out of the work plane tool. So I'm going to click outside of the work plane tool like that. Oh, that's right. I could click work plane tool first, then click outside of that. Now I want to try to align this text to this model. I'm going to highlight that. Click the align tool. Make sure it's aligned to the center like that. Click out here to get out of the align tool. I'm going to click on that text. I'm actually going to use my up arrow to move it into the model itself. I've got the grid snapped off, so it's going a bit slower, but I changed that, and I'm using the up arrow to make it go into the model itself, as you can see. I'm going to move it down just a little bit, like that. And I think what I want to do, instead of having the letters come out like that from the model, I want to have it cutting into it. So I'm going to click on the whole tool like that. Okay. Now I want to group this text with this. So I'm going to highlight these both and then group it. Now, as you can see, I've got my name, which is IRA, IRA. It's going to be looking like it's being cut out of this. And it'll be printed like this. It's probably going to need what's called support material. I'll show you guys what that would look like in the printing software we use. But it would just need some support material right there, right there, right there, these areas like that, where there's any overhanging sort of angles to the model like this. It's also going to need some support material in the back like that, going from there to there. But I'll show you what that'll look like in the next video. But yeah, so this is how you can personalize this model. This is what the model looks like in Cura. This is the software that we use to import models that you create and get them set up and ready for 3D printing. So it looks like, yeah, this should work. It's going to take about 4 hours and 7 minutes to print, and basically all you got to do is click on Save File. I save it to an SD card, and I put it in one of the printers, and then we'll print it out. So stay tuned in the next video for examples of things made in this video that we have 3D printed. Well, thanks for watching that tutorial series. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new about creating functional things in TinkerCAD. I just, for the last part of this video, wanted to show you the examples that we made that I 3D printed out. The first one is my name tag right there. It printed out pretty well, and it only took, I think, maybe like 30 minutes or so to print that out. For the 406 name tag, that's what that looked like. That also didn't take very long to print out. And it's pretty cool because you can kind of see a see-through effect with the numbers right there. And then for the last one, the phone stand holder, this is what it looks like. I printed it in this translucent yellow filament, so it's kind of hard to see the letters on my name, but this is what it looks like, and it totally works as a phone stand holder, which is really cool. As you can see too, I'm going to flip this over like that, and you can use it to watch videos like that as well, or do your homework or read ebooks if you like doing that. All right, and before we go today, I just wanted to mention that if you do want your models 3D printed, I'm going to leave my information on this screen for you to email me with your models. So if you can, with your email, just attach your model as the STL file format using that little export button on TinkerCAD. And then if you want to mention what color of plastic you want it printed in, that would be great. We have all kinds of colors, different types of colors of plastic. So lots to choose from. And in terms of the cost, we just charge 5 cents per gram of plastic per print. And for most things, it's generally a couple dollars. I would say, for this thing, I didn't weigh it out yet, but I would say it's probably at most going to be $5 to print out or less. I printed it pretty light too, so I'm sure this is more like $3 or so. So yeah, please email me if you would like what you created today to be printed out. So
Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.